So welcome to Junior Mining Hub. My name is Bill Stormont. I'm here today with American Eagle Gold. We have the CEO, Anthony Moreau, and Vice President of Exploration, Neil Prowse. American Eagle Gold trades on the Venture under the ticker AE and on the OTC as AMEGF. Welcome, gentlemen, today.
Thanks for having us, Bill.
Yeah, thanks.
Pleasure. Just before we get started, I should just quickly mention there'll be forward-looking statements made during the course of this conversation. So want you to be aware of that and take note of what you see on your screen right now. But with that out of the way, let's really just cut to the chase here. You had a news release out on Monday, which updated the market on your drill progress, your drill program progress. And I was wondering if we could just start by delving into holes 18, 19, and 20 that you highlighted in the news release. And I guess one of the things that really interests me here, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but each of these holes seems unique in its own right in terms of what it's testing and what we're seeing here. You got hole 18 and 19 testing very different aspects of mineralization. 18 focusing on what you describe as favorable geology to the north of hole 17, and hole 19 really focused on this near surface gold rich mineralization that's encountered in the south zone. And I think the intriguing thing here that has people's attention is this idea of this largely untested area that you're going into. So with those two holes, before we move on to 20, could you talk a bit about hole 18 to start? At the time of the news release, the drill was still turning. Where are we at? It was at 750 meters then, and what can you add to that? And then with regard to hole 19, this idea that are we really looking at potentially the delineation of a new trend here? Is that over egging it to make that kind of a statement? Be interested in your thoughts on progress on both of those fronts.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in here with talking about the early hole plan and our progress so far. We're still drilling in hole 18 as of today. We're getting pretty close to shutdown depth, but the initial plan with this hole is to give us more information near surface in an untested area, and an area that's in very favorable geology and geophysical signature. And then we're drilling that somewhat steeply to the east, and the idea is to intersect the main Babine porphyry stock, which lies to the east and seems to be driving the overall trend of the geophysics, and is likely playing an important factor in the emplacement of the mineralization we're seeing. So we want to get a really good geological transect across everything. So right now we're still drilling. We've started to get in and out of dikes of the porphyry stock. It's not a sharp contact. There's often little fingers of intrusive material that are injecting themselves into the host sedimentary rocks and earlier phases of diking that we're seeing. So yeah, and looking pretty consistent with what we expect in this area. We're encountering same bornite chalcopyrite mineralization. So yeah, we're pretty happy with what we're seeing. Again, it's always too early to tell until there's assays. But yeah, hole 18 is continuing, and we may well be moving up to 20, up to another 100 meters to the north of that, doing the exact same thing, drilling to the east from the west, and intersecting that porphyry stock at depth. Hole 18.
Sorry, where are you at depth-wise on 18?
We're just shy of 900 meters right now.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and hole 19, like you touched on, testing a different part of the system, and the plan for this hole is to push into some pretty unknown ground, undrilled ground, within a, again, very favorable geophysical signature. And I'll kind of present the preliminary inversion model of what we're seeing, similar to what we had last year, but with a little bit more detail and a few differences. So we're cognizant of those, and that's kind of guiding the placement of these holes, especially in the south. And yeah, it's right now we're at about 250 meters depth in that hole and continuing. So
And when you look at 19 too, I remember when you took when you did that big step out. I think it was hole 9.
Yeah.
And Tony, I remember you pushed back rightly on this idea that it wasn't as exciting a hole as perhaps had been anticipated initially, but it was seen. I think you described it more as like an actually quite an exciting hole in terms of what it was. I mean, tech encouraged you to do that step out. Is 19 kind of I don't mean to say speculative, but is it along those lines, that kind of thinking, like let's get out there and really open this area up?
So I'll take that. So not to correct you, but I thought 2309 was a spectacular hole for what it was. I was called it a drunk hole because we had next to no information. I think
that's what I was saying.
For the market, the market always wants 1% of 100 meters, but just to have that 750 meters away from any historical drilling, for tech and for our team, that was probably one of our most exciting holes, even up there with 2317. Now, if you look at hole 2419, which is the hole you're talking about, that we're at about 250 meters in depth right now. It's 1:18 p.m. on Eastern time on Thursday. We're drilling that southeast, so we're doing a bit of a step out northwest of 2201 and 2201 and 2202 that had some high grade gold and copper at surface. So doing a bit of a step out to increase the size of that potential open pit area, but at the same time, drill southeast so that we're kind of going in between an area and exploring. So we have a lot of information on the IP side, but you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt. The best way to explore really is by drilling and understanding geology. And the geology means actually seeing what the assays and the rocks tell you. So now if we drill kind of southeast, at least we're getting real live geological information. And two of our targets are to step all the way towards 2309 and also eventually get to that kind of IP embayment, which is southwest of 2309. There's been no historical drilling. We just have a really good target there. I call it Little Knack. Neil can call it maybe something else. So I kind of say we kill, 2.5 birds with one stone by probably getting some really good gold and copper in that copper gold stockworks, but also kind of exploring in the great frontier where they have never drilled before, which will hopefully help Neil and his team combine with the geophysics that we have to vector into some higher grade holes and know where we're drilling to expand that mineralization all the way to the east, which, by the way, we can eventually get all the way around this porphyry stock, but one step at a time. And like Charlie Gregg always says, you don't leave the dance without the girl you went with. And we're seeing a lot of joy from the areas that we have been drilling so far.
Neil, do you have any thoughts on what Tony is just saying there?
No, I think he hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, hole 2419, and I believe you can see my screen here now, is doing exactly that. So it's collaring to the northwest of what we expanded in 2022 in that historical gold-rich south zone, and drilling to come underneath and track that stockwork zone that was so good for bringing in gold, down to the southeast, and then traverse along that trend, which is really effectively untested below about 150 meters from the historical drilling, through highly prospective, both geologically and geophysically, throughout that package of rock. So we'll get a lot of really good information from it and hopefully intersect a lot of really good mineralization. So this hole has a lot of potential, and we're early days in it right now.
Fantastic. I mean, I guess the whole idea of the historic, there is historic drilling on at NAC. The shallow nature of it just really literally scratched the surface. I mean, that's part of your thinking about going deep here. I mean, Tony, I recall listening to you relate a story about why you took on this project in the first place, based on the insights of your uncle's half century of understanding and knowledge of this property. the opportunity at depth here, and that's really what's driving a lot of where you're going with these holes. Is that correct?
Yeah. So with my uncle, we had a limited budget, and my uncle saw a lot of shallow min, and he kind of had a big comparable, to something like Red Chris, where you see good min or decent mineralization close to surface, but Newmont bought that thing for the high grade they have at depth. So he saw, potential high grade mineralization starting somewhere between 600 and 800 meters, 600 to 900 meters. So that first year we had a limited budget, the fastest drill holes you can do are straight vertical holes. And that gets you to your target as quickly as possible. And that's where most of our holes were. And we did hit some high grade at depth. What kind of changed our plan was the fact that 2201 hit super high grade right from surface. So we're like, we have something better that's ever been drilled on this property historically. And then you fast forward to 2008, 2308 was kind of trying to, cherry pick a bit of the high grade that we had in the Copper Stockworks. And what happened was we had 775 meters and we drilled towards the west that had never really been drilled at depth. And we hit 0.5% over 775 meters of copper equivalent. And at that point, you're always kind of faking it until you make it. At that point, I was like, I think we have a mine here. We just got to prove to the public what we think. And that kind of changed our whole plan. And that 2317 of that high grade hole going east to west, combined with that 2312, which was 900 meters or 0.5%, we're like, we got something really juicy on our hands here, some real scale and some high grade. And if you look at that little patch there, so where you see those, two Magellan, whatever you want to call them, colored drill holes, 2418 and 2420, that whole kind of patch there, there's no collars, there's no historical drilling. And we're pretty certain that there's mineralization there. And that's why our focus is to, connect those holes where 2312 and 2317. Like I like movies and I like giving comparables and dumbing it down for people, but I bring it to Pulp Fiction. There's that scene with John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson, and that guy pops out and shoots him 12 times and they miss him. It's kind of what happened with Naranda and those other explorers came to our property. They drilled a lot of places shallow, but where the most joy that we've had been hitting, and I think where this mine is going to potentially be is the area that these guys never even drilled in the first place. So that's an opportunity for us. So we're very lucky to have it. And I always touch on this quote unquote jewel box. It's hyperbole. Maybe Neil doesn't want to say jewel box, but I'll say it because that's what my uncle was after. We have a really good budget now. We started off in this project, we had $1 million. We now have $15 million. So we're less worried about hitting really high grade holes in every single hole to stay alive. So we're gonna follow our game plan. So it's drilling north to south, 6 or 7 holes between holes 2312 and 2317. And with that approach, we think that if there's some high grade area, we're going to hit it at depth. And when we hit it, it's going to hit us right in the face. And at that point, we're going to be able to vector into that information and use that geology to maybe hit some sort of vertical hole right through the throat of that jewel box. But until that happens, we're going to focus on just expanding the mineralization and the size of this deposit. And, lo and behold, we're going to hit some really high grade holes. I'm pretty confident of that. But that's kind of the high level plan that we have and how we plan to eventually kind of fall into that, source feeder zone that I certainly think is there.
Just on that, I'd like to talk a bit more about the jewel box in quote unquote jewel box, but this idea, just to finish on the drill update news release on hole 2420, you talk about targeting or tracking this IP shoulder, and linking the north and south zones as a priority for the 2024 drill program. What's the significance of 20 in that context? Like, is it potentially a lynch? I mean, maybe it's too much weight to put on one hole. I suspect it is, but is it potentially a linchpin sort of hole, link up hole here that you're looking at? I mean, and I guess to me, again, this is another. These 3 holes all seem to have a different purpose in the grand scheme of things. It all goes towards one end, but I'm interested in your thoughts on that in terms of
I'll let Neil go in after, but I'll kind of talk it from an investor's point of view. If you look at this map, it's not as easy because you're looking at it from a plan view.
Yeah.
Even 2418, it's drilling to undrilled area. Yeah, thanks. So it's drilling into an undrilled area, but still it's going underneath previous collars. 2420, the collar and the bottom of that tail is going to be in complete virgin ground. So hitting that will really kind of, I think, start to prove our thesis that, we have a nice wide corridor between 2320 and 2318 and 2317 and 2312.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. It's all of these holes along this trend are important, right? We're trying to show that there is a volume of rock with enough mineralization in it to be economic, which is, when you distill it down, is the purpose of this whole exploration program, right? We want to find something that, could be a deposit one day. This area is completely undrilled, and what we now know about the geophysics and the geology is that our mineralization tends to preferentially occur within a zone of preferable IP chargeability signature and within proximity to dikes that have come in pre-mineralization, have become mineralized by the mineralizing event, but also during the emplacement of these dikes, it seems pretty clear that there was some preparation of the host rock going on, bringing in magnetite, biotite, bringing in good nucleation sites for the sulfide mineralization that eventually, we're tracking in this now. And so all of these systems still seem to be in place in this undrilled zone, and it's just a matter of systematically exploring it now, and that's what we're doing. So hole 20 is, all of these holes are important holes. It's not the most important hole. It's just another hole in our plan. The hole that we have next along that trend is going to go 100 meters to the north and do the same thing. And once we have a better handle on the geometry and the location of some of these dikes and some of the better mineralized zones within this, then we evaluate. Do we go back? Do we drill some fence holes along that trend? Do we drill some scissor holes to give us, a better, more perpendicular intersection through the chargeability signature? It's just a matter of being adaptable and reacting to what we encounter and getting it right, and making the right interpretations in the field. And it's pretty great that the work we did in the off season has really helped us understand the minute differences between some of the lithologies. It can be really, really difficult to pick out the dikes from some of the finer grained sedimentary lithologies, and it turns out that that's really important to understanding what's going on. So yeah, we're pretty happy we have the information we have now, and it's just a matter of applying that and going forward with the plan.
Neil just hit something right on the head there. It's every single hole of ours is an important hole. There's not really one hole that's more important than the other, and we're not going to kill this project or make a mine with one hole. It all kind of weaves together and tells a story. But they put a lot of really hard work over the season. Neil, Charlie, Dave, the whole team. So the work that they put in, that was pretty much the same cost as one drill hole. So it kind of shows you how important that is. And each drill hole is, the price of a fully loaded G-Wagon. So if you're going to run that thing off the side of a cliff, you might as well make sure you're putting it in a good spot. So that was 5 months of hard work and homework to make sure that every single one of those collars and holes is either going to give us some great results or at least lead us to some great results. So, Neil, thanks for kind of pointing that out. It's important.
And I would also say, that I hear what you're saying about that pre-season work that you put in, and that your preview or the video that you've got posted on your website with Neil and Charlie just running through it. That's invaluable, I think, for anyone coming to this project to understand certainly what you're doing this year or this season. But I found that that's an excellent detailed walkthrough. So I'd encourage anyone watching this video to make sure they go and watch that one. You kind of went into what I was going to ask, really, to kind of bring things to a close here. But as the need for flexibility, the need for adaptability, the need to respond to what you're seeing on the ground. When you think about next steps, when you think about phase 2 as the summer moves forward, can you do you foresee any sort of early changes to that, or what are the keys to prioritizing your next steps as the season unfolds here? Is it really just about what happens now, and then you assess and move forward once you've got a better handle on the assays? How are you going to look at that?
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty decent handle on, we can tell if we're in something really good, and we can tell if we're in something kind of okay. We do on the meter XRF analysis, so that gives us a pretty good proxy for copper. And the nature of the mineralization here outside of the south zone, which is a bit more cryptic, and it's gold mineralization, and that's harder to see with the eye, and it doesn't necessarily correlate to the copper bearing minerals. But when we're talking about the better copper grades, that's all visual mineralization, and so our geos can get a pretty good estimate on that. So that helps us be a lot more adaptable in real time rather than waiting on assays. The other thing that could really dramatically shift the course of the program is, like Tony said, the jewel box. The cautious nature and the general pessimism that you can find in geologists. I don't like to go throwing around the term jewel box, but we do have a phase of diking, this later phase of diking, that has a lot of bornite in it, and we get some pretty thick intercepts of it. And depending on what we see as we drill, any kind of hints as to orientation of those dikes, or maybe a confluence of these dikes, that could shift our focus, right? If we hit a big package of this really, really higher grade rock, we might pop a few holes in nearby at a slightly closer spacing to better define that. So that's, looking forward, looking down the road, that's something that could be a bit of a shift in the overall plan. But right now it's tracking the IP shoulder. I'll give just a quick look through the new IP data. I know a lot of people have been asking about it. It's still in a preliminary phase. I know I'm not a geophysicist, but we work with some very talented geophysicists, and there's a process to getting the best out of the data, and it's tweaking the inversion models that bring in all the old historical data, the stuff we did last year and the stuff we did this year. But it's still very informative, right? And yeah, it shows us some pretty good areas to focus on, and it's generally what we have been targeting in the past, but just with a bit more refinement. So I'll just kind of go down the plan view and then go into section view along that north zone and show what we're seeing. And for people who've been following the story, it's going to look fairly familiar, but along that south zone too, it shows, we get in as we get a bit deeper into that really kind of sweet spot, that green middling chargeability response, that green and yellow, which we have a lot of down there, and that's why we're targeting those holes across that pretty broad transect. Yeah, so this is just sort of cutting through the surface. You can see the trace of the holes with this nice annular chargeability anomaly as we step down. And as we get down to around 200, 250 meters depth, we start to see a pretty nice little signature down there, down in the southwest, and the holes are going to be transecting that. And then this IP embayment down here, this unusually shaped little anomaly within the broader annular high. And then if we just orient this roughly east-west here, just changing the view. There we go. So yeah, we'll look to the north and kind of slice through this.
So we're looking where here exactly, Neil?
So we are looking to the north now.
Okay.
In a cross-sectional view.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to bring it to the south where we have our holes planned. And yeah, you can see this shoulder. So it's a little bit steeper in this newer inversion model off to this side.
Right.
Again, it's not quite the same scale. So it's like the color scale is a little bit shifted from the old model. And the data is in a preliminary format right now, and I don't really have the ability to tweak it in the same way. But this will develop as the season goes on. But yeah, you can see we get into this really nice, and this is south of the porphyry stock. So this is in prospective host rock, which has given us the most joy off to the west of the porphyry stock. Large transect going through it in the south. So we're really encouraged by this. And yeah, it's, we'll probably hit some really good mineralization near surface based on just proximity to known mineralization. And then I'm hoping mineralization will pick up as we get a little bit deeper, and we'll start to get some really good information to the south and quite far to the east. We're drilling at about 120 degree azimuth right now. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. And yeah, we just have to see how things develop.
And depth expectations there, do you have any? It's just, again, a question of keeping going until...
Exactly. We want to get a lot of information on this hole. Some of the subsequent holes will likely be a bit shallower in terms of depth. Yeah. But this hole's planned to 800 to 900 meters right now, just to give us the largest cross section of information across this ground.
And when do you have a sense of when you might start to see some assays back? The market might start to get some news coming out of the results.
First shipment is going out tomorrow of the cut core, and it'll be pretty regular weekly deliveries of core. Turnaround this time of year, it's tough to say, but we've been surprised with how quick turnaround has been in the past. I don't like to speculate on assays. There's so much that's outside of our control there in terms of timing. Sure. So yeah, sometime between tomorrow and 2 months, I would say.
Fair enough. Well, thank you very much. That's an awesome overview. I much appreciate the detail there. Just before we wrap up, Tony, Neil, is there anything that we haven't touched on that we should have, that you think is important that for viewers to get their arms around here?
I think we touched on most of the stuff. I just want to give a quick shout out to Neil. Neil's talented geologist, but amazing project leader, and you got 20 guys on site, and you can have the nicest cruise ship in the world, but if you don't have a captain, it's going to hit another iceberg like Titanic. So we're lucky to have him. And, we got Charlie Gregg too. Charlie's from, he won the Thayer Lindsay Award for his GT gold discovery and sail. And I think Neil Prowse very well for this project could win that same award. But I just want to give a shout out to the team. They're working really long hours. They're working hard. They're putting up with me calling them every day. But you know what? Big ore bodies hang out with big ore bodies. And the guys that usually find these deposits are the ones that found the most recent deposits. So these guys are both involved with other great deposit finds, and we're happy to have them. And, it's always want to give a shout out to the team, because I'm just an armchair geo guys talking the market, and these guys are out there doing the work away from their families. So big shout out to them. And, Neil's a great guy and a real talented geo. Happy to have him.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, no, it's likewise. It's great working with American Eagle. It's it's really refreshing to work with a management team that's, as focused as they are, and puts the trust they do in us. It's really nice. So
we're going to deliver the goods. So stay tuned. And if anyone has any questions, we have an open door policy. So give me a call, send me a text, whatever you want. We're happy to call. So we're going to give people as much information as we can possible. So thank you very much. Thanks to Junior Mining Hub. Great product. Love it.
Thank you very much for your time. Could you just give us the contact details very quickly, Tony, where people can reach out to you?
Sure. 647-2. No, I'm joking. So AMOREAU at AmericanEagleGold.ca. So if you're an investor, feel free to contact me. If you're a vendor, maybe send it to info@AmericanEagleGold.ca.
Good stuff. Thank you both very much for your time, and hope you'll come back when you have results to share.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Bill.
thanks,
It's an
Bill.
awesome video.
Bye-bye.